After 18 years of marriage, I discovered my wife's Tuesday night ritual. What I did next at table 14 changed everything. At 51, I believed I had mastered the art of reading people. 3 decades of surgical practice had taught me to see beneath surfaces and to detect the subtle signs others missed. My marriage to Helena seemed unshakable. Our daughter Sophia was excelling at Princeton, and our life in Beverly Hills represented everything I had worked to build. But that Tuesday evening, as autumn shadows stretched across our marble kitchen island, Helena asked me a question that would unleash a calculated vengeance so devastating it would become legendary in our social circles. "Richard, do you ever wonder what it would be like to feel truly alive again?" she said, her manicured fingers tracing patterns on the granite surface. Something in her voice carried a weight I couldn't identify, a tremor that spoke of secrets buried too deep for casual conversation. At that moment, I didn't realize I was staring into the eyes of a woman who had already chosen to destroy everything we'd built together. The first hairline crack in my reality appeared 3 weeks later. Helena's phone buzzed during our usual evening wine ritual. When she glanced at the screen, her entire demeanor transformed. Her laugh became musical in a way it hadn't been with me in years. Her eyes sparked with an electricity I remembered from our early days, but now it felt like watching a stranger inhabit my wife's body. She excused herself to take the call in our study, and through the French doors I watched her pace like a caged panther, animated in ways that made my chest constrict with recognition. Have you ever experienced that moment when your subconscious knows something your rational mind refuses to accept? For months I cataloged inconsistencies with the same methodical precision I used to diagnose complex medical cases. There was a new perfume lingering in our walk-in closet, a scent too bold and sensual for Helena's usual understated elegance. Business trips multiplied without corresponding increases in her architectural firm's projects. Phone calls were whispered and ended abruptly when I entered the room. She suddenly upgraded her wardrobe to pieces that screamed seduction rather than sophistication. But it was her touch that betrayed her most profoundly. When someone's heart belongs elsewhere, their hands become polite strangers. The woman who once traced love letters on my back during lazy Sunday mornings now offered perfunctory kisses that felt like diplomatic gestures. Her embraces became brief and calculated, as if she were afraid prolonged contact might reveal the depth of her deception. The devastating truth crashed into my world on a rain-soaked Thursday in November. I had returned early from the hospital after canceling my afternoon surgeries due to a migraine, something that had happened perhaps twice in my entire career. Our housekeeper, Maria, wasn't due until the following day, so the house felt unusually quiet as I climbed the stairs toward our bedroom. Through the partially open door I heard Helena's voice, but it carried tones I hadn't heard in years, breathless, vulnerable, completely unguarded. "Marcus, you make me feel like I'm 25 again," she whispered, and the raw intimacy in her voice struck me like a physical blow. "When I'm with you, I remember who I used to be before I became this perfect surgeon's wife trapped in her gilded cage." The phone conversation continued for another excruciating 27 minutes. I know because I stood frozen in the hallway, my medical training automatically noting my elevated heart rate, the cold sweat beading on my forehead, and the way my hands trembled as I processed every word of her betrayal. She spoke of weekend getaways to Napa Valley, stolen afternoons in his downtown loft, and plans to leave me once Sophia graduated. What shattered me beyond repair was hearing her laugh as she described how oblivious I was, how easy it had been to deceive someone she called emotionally tone deaf. When betrayal reaches this magnitude, it doesn't just break your heart, it redefines your entire understanding of reality. Everything I believed about love, trust, and the woman I had shared my life with for 18 years crumbled like sand castles before a tsunami. The depth of her deception was so complete and so meticulously orchestrated that I found myself questioning not just our marriage but my ability to perceive truth itself. But here's what Helena underestimated about the man she married. Surgeons don't panic under pressure. We analyze, we plan, and we execute with a precision that borders on artistry. As I stood in that hallway, listening to her demolish our life with casual cruelty, something ice-cold and unbreakably strong crystallized in my chest. If she wanted to play games of deception, she was about to discover she had chosen the wrong opponent. Over the following weeks, I transformed into a master of surveillance. My surgical schedule provided perfect cover. Helena never questioned my irregular hours because she assumed I was saving lives, when in reality I was documenting the systematic destruction of ours. I hired Marcus Caldwell, the city's most discreet private investigator, a man whose reputation for uncovering secrets was matched only by his ability to remain invisible while doing so. The evidence accumulated like pathology slides under a microscope. Photographs of Helena and her lover, Dr. Sebastian Torres, a plastic surgeon from Cedars-Sinai whose reputation for seducing married women was apparently as polished as his professional skills. Credit card records showing expensive lingerie from Agent Provocateur, jewelry from Tiffany I had never seen, hotel bills from the Beverly Hills Hotel charged to an account I didn't know existed. But the piece de resistance was discovering their regular dinner dates at Mastro's Beverly Hills, the same restaurant where Helena and I had celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary. Every Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock, table 14, they would share intimate meals while she wore the diamond earrings I had given her for our last anniversary. The poetic justice was so perfect it felt like the universe itself was collaborating in my revenge. During this period of reconnaissance, I maintained the facade of the devoted husband with an Academy Award-worthy performance. I brought Helena flowers, planned romantic dinners, and even surprised her with a weekend trip to Carmel that she reluctantly attended while texting Sebastian constantly. Watching her struggle to maintain her double life while I held all the cards filled me with a satisfaction so pure it was almost spiritual. The preparation phase lasted exactly 6 weeks. I consulted Jonathan Pierce, the most ruthless divorce attorney in Los Angeles, a man who specialized in high net worth separations and who had never lost a case involving infidelity. We crafted a strategy so comprehensive it would leave Helena with barely enough resources to maintain her current lifestyle, let alone start fresh with her plastic surgeon lover. I liquidated assets she didn't know about, moved money to accounts she had never seen, and documented every single act of adultery with timestamps and locations. The prenuptial agreement she had signed so carelessly 18 years ago, trusting in young love and my assurances that it was merely a formality, would now become the instrument of her financial destruction. But material revenge, while satisfying, wasn't sufficient for the magnitude of her betrayal. I needed something that would create a moment of reckoning so public, so undeniably humiliating, that she would understand the true cost of underestimating Richard Sterling. The plan I conceived was surgical in its precision and theatrical in its execution. I knew their schedule better than they did. Every Tuesday at Mastro's, every weekend at the Montage Laguna Beach, every stolen afternoon at his downtown loft. For maximum impact, I chose their most sacred ritual, their weekly dinner at table 14, where they celebrated their twisted version of romance while mocking the sanctity of my marriage. I spent 2 weeks choreographing every detail with the meticulousness I usually reserved for complex cardiac procedures. The maitre d' at Mastro's, Roberto, had known me for over a decade and owed me a considerable favor after I operated on his daughter pro bono 3 years earlier. When I explained what I needed, his eyes gleamed with the enthusiasm of someone who appreciated poetic justice. The envelope, crafted from premium Italian stationery and sealed with burgundy wax bearing my family crest, contained not just divorce papers, but a complete dossier documenting every moment of Helena's infidelity. Inside were photographs of her and Sebastian in compromising positions, copies of hotel receipts, transcripts of their most intimate phone conversations, and a detailed financial breakdown showing exactly how much her betrayal was going to cost her. On the chosen Tuesday, I positioned myself at the bar with perfect sight lines to table 14. Helena arrived first, stunning in a black Valentino dress I had purchased for her birthday, her auburn hair styled in soft waves that caught the restaurant's ambient lighting like burnished copper. She looked radiant, alive in ways she never appeared at home, and for a brief moment, I felt the ghost of the love I once carried for this woman. Sebastian joined her 10 minutes later, and watching them together was like observing a perfectly choreographed dance of deception. They touched constantly, fingers intertwining over the breadbasket, hands brushing as they shared appetizers, intimate leans across the table that spoke of shared secrets and stolen passion. Every gesture was a knife twist in whatever remained of my heart, but also fuel for the satisfaction that was moments away from erupting. They ordered their usual: Helena's lobster tail with champagne sauce, Sebastian's dry-aged ribeye, and a bottle of Dom Perignon 2010 that cost more than most people's monthly salary. They were toasting something, laughing with the careless abandon of people who believed they were untouchable, when Roberto approached their table with a silver salver bearing my envelope. What happened next will remain etched in my memory as one of the most exquisite moments of justice I have ever witnessed. Helena's face transformed through a sequence of emotions so raw and so genuine that for the first time in months I saw the real woman beneath her carefully constructed lies. Confusion painted her features first as Roberto placed the envelope beside her wine glass with ceremonial precision. She glanced around the restaurant, perhaps wondering if this was some romantic surprise from Sebastian, her smile expectant and radiant. But when she broke the wax seal and began reading, her expression crumbled like a demolished building, each word another devastating blow to her composure. The color drained from her face so completely she looked translucent in the candlelight. Her hands began trembling so violently the papers rustled like autumn leaves. And when she reached the photographs, a sound escaped her throat that was part gasp, part sob, part animal keen of recognition. Sebastian leaned forward, concerned, trying to see what had triggered such a dramatic response. But Helena clutched the evidence to her chest like she was trying to contain a hemorrhaging wound. "What is it, darling? What's wrong?" Sebastian's voice carried across the hushed restaurant, and I saw other diners beginning to notice the drama unfolding at table 14. Helena couldn't speak. She couldn't even breathe properly. Her eyes darted frantically around the room until they found mine across the sea of tables, and in that moment of recognition, her world completed its final collapse. The look she gave me was pure devastation mixed with grudging admiration, the expression of someone who realized they had been comprehensively outplayed by a master strategist. I raised my glass of a single malt Macallan in a subtle salute, allowing myself the smallest smile of acknowledgement. She had wanted to feel alive again, and now she was experiencing every emotion simultaneously: terror, shame, rage, disbelief, and the crushing weight of consequences she never saw coming. Sebastian grabbed the papers from her trembling hands, and watching his face process the magnitude of what they contained was almost as satisfying as Helena's reaction. His complexion turned ashen as he realized he wasn't just looking at divorce proceedings, but at evidence that could potentially destroy his medical career. The photographs were particularly damaging, taken during his lunch hours at his medical office, proving he had conducted the affair during time he was supposed to be treating patients. The entire restaurant fell silent. Conversations were suspended as diners sensed the dramatic collapse at the center table. Helena began hyperventilating, her breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps that suggested she was on the verge of a full panic attack. Sebastian kept reading, his expression growing more horrified with each page, until he finally understood this wasn't just personal destruction, but professional annihilation. "You need to calm down," Sebastian hissed, but his own panic was evident in the way his hands shook as he tried to organize the scattered evidence. "People are staring. We need to leave. Now." But Helena was beyond rational response. 18 years of marriage, a lifetime of careful reputation management, her standing in Beverly Hills society, all of it was crumbling in real time, and she could feel every eye in the restaurant witnessing her humiliation. She tried to stand, stumbled, caught herself on the edge of the table, and sent their champagne flutes crashing to the floor in an explosion of crystal and Dom Perignon. The sound shattered the restaurant's suspended silence, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. Phones appeared to capture the spectacle, whispers raced from table to table like wildfire. Helena looked around desperately, realizing that her private shame had become public entertainment, and that this moment would be dissected and discussed in every social circle she had carefully cultivated over 2 decades. I finished my drink slowly, savoring each sip as I watched my meticulously planned revenge unfold with clockwork precision. This wasn't just justice, it was poetry, a masterpiece of comeuppance that would be remembered and retold in Beverly Hills social circles for years to come. Helena had wanted excitement, had craved the thrill of deception and betrayal, and now she was experiencing the ultimate rush of watching her carefully constructed life explode in spectacular fashion. As they stumbled toward the exit, Helena clutching the evidence against her chest while Sebastian tried to shield her from the staring crowd, I reflected on the profound satisfaction of patience rewarded. For 6 weeks I had endured her lies, her touches that felt like betrayal, and her presence in our home while knowing she planned my abandonment. But every moment of that suffering had been an investment in this perfect moment of reckoning. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in systematic destruction. Helena's divorce attorney, despite his reputation and exorbitant fees, was completely outmatched by the evidence I had compiled. The prenuptial agreement held firm, protecting the vast majority of my assets while leaving Helena with a settlement that wouldn't support her current lifestyle for more than a few years. But the social consequences were even more devastating than the financial ones. Beverly Hills society, despite its reputation for scandals and affairs, still maintained certain standards about discretion and dignity. Helena's public meltdown at Mastro's had violated every unwritten rule about how affairs should be conducted, quietly, subtly, without creating scenes that embarrassed entire social circles. Sebastian's career suffered collateral damage that exceeded even my expectations. The medical board investigation triggered by the evidence of his workplace infidelity resulted in a formal censure and mandatory ethics training. Several of his high-profile clients, wealthy women who expected absolute discretion from their cosmetic surgeons, quietly transferred their business to competitors. His practice, while not destroyed, would never fully recover from the scandal. Meanwhile, I emerged from the wreckage not as a victim, but as someone who had demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking and controlled response that actually elevated my standing in our social community. I had been betrayed, certainly, but I had handled that betrayal with such calculated precision that other husbands began viewing me with a mixture of respect and wariness, while their wives reconsidered any casual thoughts they might have harbored about marital infidelity. 6 months later, I received an unexpected phone call from Helena. Her voice, once so confident and melodious, now carried the weight of someone who had learned harsh lessons about consequences and miscalculation. "Richard," she said, and I could hear tears threading through her words, "I need you to know that I understand what you did and why you did it. I destroyed something beautiful, and you made sure I experienced the full weight of that destruction." I listened without speaking, allowing her words to fill the silence between us. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued, "but I need you to know that your revenge was perfect, absolutely perfect. I spent 18 years thinking I knew who you were, and you taught me that I never understood you at all." After she hung up, I sat in my study surrounded by the life I had rebuilt from the ashes of her betrayal, and I felt something I hadn't experienced since that terrible November evening when I discovered her deception: peace. Not happiness exactly, but the deep satisfaction that comes from seeing justice served with precision and artistry. Today, I practice medicine with the same dedication I always have. I maintain friendships with people who prove their loyalty during my darkest period, and I've learned to find contentment in a life defined by authenticity rather than performance. Helena's betrayal taught me that love without respect is meaningless, that trust once broken becomes a liability, and that sometimes the most profound acts of self-love involve eliminating people who view your devotion as weakness. Do I regret the calculated nature of my revenge? Never. Helena chose to play a game of deception and betrayal, assuming she was competing against someone too naive or too comfortable to fight back effectively. She learned, in the most public and humiliating way possible, that underestimating your opponent is the most dangerous mistake you can make. That night at Mastro's, surrounded by the ruins of her carefully constructed lies, Helena experienced something she had been craving all along: the feeling of being truly alive. Terror, shame, the adrenaline rush of complete exposure, the crushing weight of consequences she never saw coming. She wanted excitement, and I gave her the most thrilling moment of her life: the precise instant when she realized that her victim was actually the predator, and her game of betrayal had become her own destruction. Justice, when executed with surgical precision, doesn't need to announce itself with shouting or dramatics. It simply arrives, inevitable and undeniable, carrying the weight of truth that no amount of charm or manipulation can deflect. Helena's betrayal was a fire that threatened to consume everything I had built. But I became the wind that controlled that fire, directing it back toward its source until nothing remained but clarity, consequence, and the quiet satisfaction of perfect revenge.